So, hello everyone. You see two smiling gentlemen on this slide. I am lucky enough to be one of them. My name is Thomas Quandt, and I welcome you warmly to our webinar on demand and capacity management for organizations that work in the real world. Or in other words, how the heck can we make plans that work? My responsibility at Meisterplan is the product consulting and customer relationship management. And to make it two, I have my brother in crime, John, with me. John, your turn.
Good afternoon or good morning to some of you. I'm John Morrissey. I'm Principal Consultant on Meisterplan at Sandhill. We've worked in project portfolio management for more than 20 years now and really like Meisterplan and believe it's absolutely at the front of usability and usefulness. So I'm very pleased to be presenting this afternoon. We're going to go through a little bit of death by PowerPoint first of all from Thomas, but I promise that will be quick, and then go through into a demo of the product itself. Thomas, all yours.
Thanks, John. So before we go on, I would like to inform you that we are recording this session. And furthermore, participants, as you might have noticed, will stay muted throughout the session, so questions can be asked by using the questions box on the webinar interface. And we will come back to your questions at the end of the session, promised. So this is our agenda. I would like to start this webinar with telling you something about the idea behind Meisterplan and the things left and right of it. Then John will give you an introduction of Meisterplan itself in the software. Now you all, dear participants, have been trying to make plans that work. And that's a somewhat bold claim, but let us assume I'm right. So all of you know that at times this can feel pretty much like uphill and against the wind. As that's one reason, there is this cheeky sod called reality who keeps trying to put the spoke in your wheel. For an organization, this means changing requirements the PMO has to react to all the time. These spinning circles you're seeing here are not meant to hypnotize you, but they shall allow us a closer look at what happens in organizations in a project portfolio management context. You see the left circle called collect, which symbolizes the process of collecting, gathering new ideas and initiatives, flooding into your organization. And these new initiatives, they must be evaluated. Information must be gathered. And in the end, you have to take a decision whether you want to make them become projects or not. The red circle on the right side, called execute, symbolizes the your active portfolio, which has been executed by your project managers typically. And things happen to your project managers and project staff all the time. People become ill, people leave the company, projects take longer than originally planned, and you have to decide what you want to do with these projects. If you want to look for a replacement for people, if you can afford extending this project, or if you have to stop it and shift resources to another project in return. So both these circles, collect and execute, they send their input into a third circle here called decide, and this is your decision process where your portfolio management officer works on creating a overall portfolio that works to have it confirmed by the portfolio board. And this design of the overall portfolio must happen considering the company's strategy. Something else happening in many organizations is people using a wide range of different tools to perform their everyday work. So This can happen officially or unofficially. The logos shown here on this slide only mean to give you a vague idea. In the past years, it was a fashion to try replacing these tools by any huge software, which then took years to implement and millions to purchase. So this variety of tools is not the challenge, though. This even helps our organization to be more efficient, to be more effective in carrying out every day's work. So what you need is adding a lean portfolio management in between your company's strategy and the project management. Lean project portfolio management has then the task to answer two questions. The first question is, which projects are we going to do and when? This is aimed towards the strategy. And second question is, who does what? That's aimed towards the project management and tactical resource management. We want to support people approaching this challenging topic in three ways. The first is we provide a Lean PPM community called the Quest. This community is free of charge, and it's meant to bring people, Meisterplanners or not, together to find the right ways to make plans that work. So please, after this webinar, we invite you to become part of this Quest. Go to the quest.meisterplan.com link, sign in, and help us and yourself to find the right way to make plans that work. The second thing is a Lean PPM method. This method is meant to, add something to the software itself. It's to cover the governance, to give you an idea on what meetings you might need, what PPM roles you might need in your organization to support or to set up and live this Lean PPM process. And last but not least, we offer a Lean PPM tool, which is called Meisterplan. This tool aims to put the PMO, the Portfolio Management Office, on top of things, helping them to gather the information, to put senior management in a position to decide, to have senior management taking the right decisions in time to help our project managers and to support our projects. And third, another aim is to have our project teams to deliver the absolute minimum info required. So Meisterplan should not be an additional burden. We have currently around 170 Meisterplan customers worldwide. Here you see a variety of them. And this slide is meant to show that portfolio management is a topic relevant to all kinds of industrial branches and all kinds of organizational sizes. And as we notice every day, Lean PPM is just a topic still growing, evolving, and not something really, I would say, mature. So even very, very large worldwide companies approach us asking us what is the right way to do portfolio management. So this is the moment where I would like to pass over to John to give you an introduction to Meisterplan. John, I'm giving you the moderator rights right now.
Splendid. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's show my screen. Oh, good. Okay. So for any current users of Meisterplan, this is the new UI, which will be released shortly. So regard this as a bit of a preview of the tool. For any new users, this is Meisterplan. This is what it's going to look like from very shortly here on in. Please note that there is an introductory video on Quest, which goes over some of the features and some of the changes for when this is released. Please do register on Quest and go and have a look at the video. It's very helpful, and it shows you the changes that are up and coming. So we have three areas of the screen. We have our work at the top, we have our people, our roles and resources in the middle, and where relevant, we have financial information related to the delivery of these projects at the bottom. I'm going to probably keep my financial area closed this afternoon. We'll cover that in a future webinar, but within 45-50 minutes, then we'll just concentrate on the area that Thomas has highlighted, making plans that work. And there's a question as to why we got involved in this in the first place. And primarily, I think because there's a great frustration amongst organizations on taking on a portfolio of work, lots of plans, that if we looked inside ourselves and told the truth, we know that the program is not deliverable. We're overstretching ourselves to be able to deliver a big portfolio of work to the cost and timescale that we're being asked to. That's quite frustrating, and a month into a set of projects and it's almost immediately gone amber, possibly red, because we've gone off track. So we live in the real world, changes do happen, and we need to be flexible enough with our planning to be able to allow for some of that and to work properly, to be, to really be realistic about what we can deliver. And this is part of Meisterplan's fantastic capability. It enables you to be able to plan for the future with some understanding of the implications of things that may change. So at the moment, I'm looking at obviously a set of simplified Gantt bars on here. The darker the bar, the more resources there are deployed on that particular project. So that's the view I'm looking at the moment. And I'm going to change that pretty much straight away and go into my settings side over here. You can see there's all sorts of ways of viewing the information. And in this particular case, I'm going to change from saturation by workload. I'm going to look at the phases of my projects. I've defined 4 phases on this set of projects: initiation, planning, execution, and close. This is all configurable by yourselves, as you would imagine. Okay, and now I can see that I've got colored bars. My Gantt bars are now colored in sections, each of them separated by a milestone, which aligns with the end of a particular phase. So if I look at hover over my milestone there, I can see that it's completion of my execution phase. That was how long it took. And because I'm nice and consistent across my planning, I can see that all of these have got the same set of bars and milestones on there. I can add additional milestones on there. The ones that are there at the moment are divided into phases. You can see over here, I've also got a program with 3 projects underneath it. And as I hover over things, you'll see black lines between milestones on here, which indicates where there is a dependency between different milestones on different projects within the system. Okay. You'll also note that up here it says projects are in priority order. And that's important within Meisterplan because we're managing both the work and the resources that are going to do it. So the higher your project is in the priority order, you've got the first call on the resources that are available to deliver it. At some point in any organization, it's likely that you've got more work to do than the people available to do it. So it's important that you have some form of decision-making mechanism on which projects actually do have the priority, so we can get away from the person that shouts loudest or the MD's pet project. So Meisterplan provides an objective method of prioritizing your projects and seeing what happens if you change those priorities. We'll keep coming back to this, and Thomas may well make comments as we go through to ensure I don't get too focused on the features of the products, but keep coming back to it, that what we're looking for is a set of plans that work together, not just in isolation. So I'm going to just concentrate in this top section for a minute and take, for example, my Windows update over here. just click on that. Before I click on it, I'll hover over it. And you see this pop-up window that comes out and has various metadata related to the project concern. So the start, finish dates, you'll note that there's a rank in there as well. So this project is ranked number 5 in my list of projects, and there's a project score against it as well. And we'll come to this later as to where this has come from. All of this information is configurable by yourselves. So things like fit to strategy, payback period, the level of risk associated with this project. These are configured attributes that have just been prepared on the settings side of the tool so that it's completely configurable to your own processes and your own business. You'll see there's an operational expenditure listed there at the bottom, 14,600, which is a product of the number of hours on the project multiplied by the hourly rate of those roles or resources that are being used to deliver it. So straight away, we've got a view of what this project is costing us, where it is within its life scale, and various other information about it. All right. So I'm going to just toggle this window off for a second. I will put it back on again as we go through, but just to avoid it being distracting. So Meisterplan isn't a static system. It's designed to enable you to move things about and make changes to see what the implication of those changes are. So I can take my project and drag it up and down my priority list, if I so choose. I can take hold of it and move it backwards and forwards. So this is a nice simple project, my Windows update. There's not a lot of work involved in there. It's fairly short, and I've just got 2 people that are on here at the moment, one fulfilling the role of junior developer and one project manager, and I can see that they're working for 25 days. Or my junior developer is working for 25 days on the project. My project manager has 5 days over the lifetime of the project. So perhaps I might want to see that rather than in days. What's it like in terms of their total allocation as FTE, full-time equivalent? And I can see here that actually, so that's occupying Kira 0.4 of an FTE, so effectively 2 days a week she's working on this, while my project manager really isn't taking a great deal of time associated with it. Okay, so each of my projects on here will have a team, and depending upon perhaps how far it is into the future, maybe it's only been identified as roles, and then things that are a bit closer may be identified as people. So as projects come over the horizon, we expect them just to be planned in role, and as they get further to being in flight, then individuals are allocated to them to do the work. You'll also notice that I've got a green must-have line and a red cut-off line. Now, the point of those is that this helps focus an organization on concentrating on the work that is discretionary, the things that they have to think about. Some things are a given. We've had the argument about them. We've had the discussion. Perhaps these projects are for regulatory purposes or infrastructure, but we have to deliver them, come what may. So those sit above our must-have line, and we don't need to give them any further debate. Anything that sits between must-have and cut-off is discretionary, and we can argue about where those are going to sit, how important they are, and what the priority is of those particular ones. But any project that sits below my cut-off line is not active from the point of view of resourcing. Once it drops below the cut-off line, then I needn't worry about it anymore. I could also move my cut-off line up and down, and you'll see the point of that when we're looking at resourcing in a minute or two. I've currently zoomed into a quarter. I'm going to go into a month now, so you'll see that the timescale changes on here. Just drag it back so that we're more looking at a current period. The red vertical line is today, and now I'm going to start looking at some of the roles and resources. If I click on a project name at the top, like my Windows update, I only see the roles that are being used to deliver that particular project. And as we know, because we've clicked on the Windows update before, we know that there is a person that's been allocated to that, Kira, and also somebody that's on the fulfilling the role of project manager, Luke. So I can plan by role or resource. The bright green area down here is the project that I'm looking at, my Windows update. And if I move my project backwards and forwards in time, you can see how it takes the team of people with it. Okay. And again, if I move my project up and down the priority list, you will see as I take it down the priority list, brighter green block will gradually shift until the point where this is my lowest priority project. And now it's right at the top of my histogram. So I've gone from the histogram represents all the demand that's being asked of my junior developers from these projects up here. And my histogram, I'm looking to be nicely full to hold all of the capacity of my junior developers. But in this case, I've gone over capacity. I've got more demand than I can cope with. On the other hand, if I take my project to the top of the list, you'll see it's at the bottom of the histogram now. It's getting first call on the resources, and I've transferred the problem to somebody else. In this case, if I click on that project at the top, I can see it's my unified communications platform now that's going to have a problem with resources. Okay. So if I click on a project at the top, then I only see the roles and resources that are being used to deliver that particular project. Conversely, if I click on a role at the bottom, I only see the projects at the top that involve that particular role. Okay, so my junior consultants are only working on this set of projects up here, and my senior developers working on a different set. Okay, so I've already identified that my junior consultants have got more work than they're able to cope with. They've got a red block up here, their histogram has gone red. So let's dig into that in a little more detail. You'll also notice, pardon me, that I've got red lines on the top of some of my projects up here. These red lines are a warning. They're flagging to you that there is a problem on that particular project in that time period, because somewhere down here, I've got a problem with overcapacity. I've got more demand. And you can see how these align to the overages down here. So let's have a look at my junior consultants and see where their capacity and where this demand is coming from and what we can do about it. So if I open up my junior consultants, I can see that I've got a set of people underneath them that fulfill the role of junior consultant. I'm going to toggle my pop-up window back on again so we can see a little bit of information about them. So if I hover over Sophie as an example, we know that her primary role is a junior consultant, and she sits within multiple OBSs. These are organizational breakdown structures. So she's part of the consulting area, which sits within professional services, which is a departmental structure of the organization. Equally, she's a consultant, so she's sitting under the global role of consultants, and she's based in the Chicago office. So I can have multiple breakdown structures which are appropriate to my company and the way that it works and is organized. You also see she's got an hourly cost against her and some skills associated with delivering her job. So she speaks French, she's good at requirements engineering, and she's also a Spanish speaker. And again, all this information I can pick up about other people. Tia here, again, there's a junior consultant. She's also based in Chicago. She also speaks Spanish. Okay. Now, if I hover over the histogram of any person, let's have a look. Let's hover over Sophie at the moment. So during that month of June, she's got 21 days worth of capacity. Sophie works full-time. She's a full-time equivalent. And during June, there are 21 working days. But she's been actually allocated enough work for 34 days. So her horizontal green line, this line that goes across here, represents her capacity. And where she's gone above it, she's got more work allocated to her than she's capable of doing. So once we cross that capacity line, the histogram goes red. Kyle, at this point, he's got 21 days work again. He's 1 FTE. But he's only been allocated 10 days worth of work, so his histogram only comes halfway up the box. He's only halfway through to his capacity. And finally, Tia, as an example down here, she's only got 10.5 days worth of capacity because she works part-time. She only works half the time, therefore she's only got half the capacity. My individual's capacity adds up to give me a total capacity of my junior consultants, 4.5 FTEs, which during June equates to 94.5 days. I've got 128 days of work, so my capacity is red. I've gone over. I've got too much work. Okay, so shall we see where that is all coming from? If I click onto the histogram down here, I can see the individual projects that are related to it. So if I hover over it, you can see that my Acme Inc. implementation support is highlighted at the top gradually as I go up. If I hover over something, then I'll see the information at the top related to it. And you can see again, the pop-up box comes in. So during this period, I can see that my junior consultants have got this amount of capacity, they've been allocated this amount of work, and then the detail related to my internal reorganization project, because that's the one that I'm hovering over at the moment. If I then, let's do the same, rather than looking at the junior consultants, let's do the same with Sophie. If I click on Sophie, then I only see the projects that Sophie's working on up here. And if I open it up, I can see what other people are also working on the project up here. And at the moment, I'm broken down into grids, so I can see a grid view of the amount of time that people are committed to working on these projects. If I click in Sophie's histogram, then I only see the work that Sophie is doing on here. And if I wanted again to see that rather than as FTE, if I actually want to see the number of days that have been worked on there, and let's see it flexibly rather than a time grid, then I can do that. And I can see that Sophie's actually working 62 days during that period on that particular piece of work, and another 170 odd down here. Okay, so I can look at a role level, a group of people as to how their capacity is. I can drill into that. I can see the information related to the teams that people, that all of the team that are working on individual projects, and then gradually I can look just at Sophie's work, her individual work, and then I can back out of that and gradually go back to my top level again. Okay, so I can drill in and then come out again. So in an ideal world, what I really want to do is to have all of my roles nicely full to the capacity line, and not have any work left over to distribute to them. Okay. So let's have a quick look on my internal reorganization project up here, which I had a look at earlier, just clicked on earlier, and I could see that I've got a red line across it up here. So I know I'm going to have a problem, and it's coming on me quite rapidly now. Is there anything I could do about it? Well, just as an example, one thing I could do in here is, let's say, what would happen if I delayed the project? It looks as though I've got a little bit of capacity down here and here. Maybe I could delay the project for a bit, or at least have a break in here. So if I hover over a milestone, I can right click on it and split project at that milestone. You see that it's now given me a split in there, and I can move that second half of the project. So if I, for example, was to delay until August and have a couple of months break on here, if that was an acceptable solution, then I'm now able to deliver that project within my capacity line. Now, I've still got a bit of a problem up here on a project, but at least my internal reorganization one could do. So maybe that's a scenario that I would like to suggest to people. Now, you'll see that there is a dependency between a couple of milestones on here. So if I try to move my project out too far, I will find that I violate that dependency between those milestones, and then they go red. And I can see that I've violated a milestone, so I wouldn't be able to push my project back to February, because then I wouldn't be able to deliver my new reporting engine. So, okay, or I can just now bump it back where it came from and leave it where it is. So that's an option. I could delay a project. I could split a project. I could take a project up the priority list, but that just transfers the problem elsewhere. So what would happen within my portfolio, bearing in mind that we live in the real world, and I'm working within a scenario which I've called my May scenario. I may have a plan of record. I may have gone through my program board at the end of the last month, just as an example, and agreed what my plan is for May. And I've created a scenario within which I'm going to plan for May. And somebody has suddenly come in with a new piece of work. We've got a new piece of work that is necessary to consider. Well, I know I've already got a problem coming up in June and July with some of my people down here. So how is another piece of work going to affect them? So I can go to my add button and add in a project. I could also add a program and group projects into a program if I like, but this afternoon I'm just going to concentrate on a project. So click on a new project. You see I get a pop-up window comes out here, and by default the project comes in just above my cutoff line. So it's right at the bottom of my priority list at the moment, and I'm going to call it something creative like a new project. And because I'm zoomed in to the level that I am, it's giving me a quarter length project. It's giving me a 3-month project on here. And I may want to change that straight away and do something else. I can also change that within the Gantt bar itself. I'll just change it within there. And I can put a manager on here. And because it's early, then no issues on here. And I can align my project business goals. So we've got a strategic section of Meisterplan where you create your business goals and align the projects to them. So you can check that you are running the right things for your business. Let's say this is it, change the business. And my organizational breakdown structure, we commented this earlier. So let's say that this is a project that's being run out of Seattle, for example, and that it sits within my consulting area of my business. And I can have as many of these OBSs as I like and put multiple levels on here so that they allow me to organize the information within Meisterplan as is appropriate to the organization, but also to ensure that the right people have the right access to the right projects. Okay, so we can look at things correctly, we can organize things appropriately for our organization. I've got a notes field, so I could write in something like a wonderful new project. And all of this information obviously is available for reporting upon. My stage gate, I mean, all of this is new information. Degree of completion, well, it's only just started. How well does this fit to strategy? Not terribly well at all, I don't think, at the moment. It's actually got quite a long payback date on here, so it's not great, and it's actually quite a risky project. So I've created my project and I've put some information on there to begin with. Okay, and here's now my new project. There it is. That's my start date today, the end date as I put on here, and then I can start doing something with it, move it backwards and forwards. Actually, it's probably going to be a 6-month project, going to be deliverable at the end of November in an ideal world. So let's start thinking about the team that might be necessary to work on here. So I'm going to allocate some roles and resources on here. I'm going to put some, I know I'm going to need some junior consultant time, so that's already a problem because I know I've got an issue with my junior consultant. I'm going to need a bit of project management time. I'm probably going to need a senior developer, but I'll leave that for the moment. I could do with somebody that speaks French. So I can enter a skill on here and search by skill. So let's put, well, we know that Sophie's already pretty heavily loaded at the moment. Let's choose somebody else and put Danielle on there. And I'd also like to include Erin on here for some experience. So I can search just by an individual and put those on there as well. So I can add roles or people or skills onto here to decide who's going to be on the team. Not sure about days at the moment. I think Erin's probably got about 20 days work on there because I'm just on one there for experience. Danielle, it's probably about 50 days worth of translation work. I actually want to have 2 junior consultants on here full time. So if I put 2F on there, then it changes the metric. You can see I could either enter as full-time equivalent days or hours. And in this case, I've put 2 junior consultants on there and maybe half a project manager. Okay, and straight away I can see that I'm heavily loaded down here on my junior consultants and my project managers. I know that this is going to be a struggle to get this piece of work in. Now, in line with my business phases, I'm going to pop some couple of milestones on here at the moment. I'm going to add a milestone on there which coincides with my initiation. and another one down here, another milestone, which is my end of my planning phase down here. Okay, and I'll pop another one on there, which isn't a specific phase, it's just a milestone. Okay, and what I'm going to do is create a break in my project. At that point, I'm going to put a split in there and say, I don't need any of my junior consultants to begin with, because they're not going to be ready to do it. I'm only in the planning phase, and actually I'm going to need two at the end, two in the middle, and I might just need one at the end. So I can create a resource profile for my particular project and see how that balances out across the future. Okay, so this is my shell project, and at the moment it's right at the bottom, so I'm going to have a bit of a problem with it. So I know I've already got an issue with this particular project down here, my new project. So how could I possibly fit it in? Well, to be honest, my junior consultants are so heavily loaded that I'm not entirely sure I'm ever going to be able to move it in and around, because they're always going to be overloaded. So what would happen if, therefore, I was to try and bring in some help to do it? And what I can do is click on my particular role down here, say my junior consultants. If I open them up, click on my white line down here, and say what would happen if I brought in an FTE, a contractor, for a period of time, let's say during that period, and I brought in a body to help me. Well, actually, that looks to have taken out quite a lot. What would happen if I could bring in 1.5 people, say? And that almost wipes out my overage. I may need to do some juggling down here, but actually that's not so bad. So if I can get permission to bring in 1.5 FTEs worth of contract time on there, I've got a better chance of being able to bring in my new project down here. So having planned this project by role, I could also go in there and see who might be available to do it. I'm going to be cheeky, and I'm going to drag my project up the list a little bit and see who might be available. Yeah, I might not be able to take it up that far, but we'll try it there and see who might be available. If I open it up, right click on my role, and over here, the system will suggest to me people that are going to be available for doing this particular piece of work. And straight away, I know I've got a problem. I'm not going to have anybody available to do it, because this is what their load would look like after I'd allocated them to the project. Too much on there. So rather than my junior consultants, maybe I could roll in my senior consultants as well and bring in this case, Isabel is actually available to do this piece of work. I can choose Isabel to do it, confirm the replacement. When I go back to my portfolio designer over here, I can now find that I've got Isabel fulfilling the role of junior consultant during that period, so I've partially staffed my project. So I can plan by role, I can plan by individual on here, I can create new work and bring it in. Now, I blithely just moved my new project up and down the priority list there. Now, we've already said that it's quite important that we get this list correct, so that we get the appropriate number of people in here. So actually, before I do that, as I've moved it up and down the list and I've made some changes in here, I may want to communicate these changes out to people. So I'm going to click on my report section in here, and you can see that there's a number of ways in which Meisterplan supports reporting. You, as the main user in here, the PMO, or a number of people within the PO, may do the work in here, or project managers may come in and update their own projects, add the status on there, put some notes on there. But it's equally important that this information is communicated around the rest of the organization. So within Tableau, there are in-app pivot reports, which are very similar to using an Excel pivot report. You can export to Excel if you so choose and do some manipulation of the raw data within Excel. One very simple one we have here is just an HTML-based report, which just gives a very simple text-based report of the things that I've changed. So I brought in 1.5 FTEs in my planning scenario. So I'm comparing my new scenario, which I'm working in, with the plan of record, which is what was approved at the end of April. I can see that I've created a new project. I've added some people on there. I've put some milestones on, and I've moved some projects backwards and forwards and changed some people's allocations on there. So it's a very simple text report on there. If I want to have a look at some of the in-app pivot reports on here, then you can see how it's very similar to just a standard Excel pivot report, and I can make changes within here as well. So let's say take out 2019, just give me the information on 2018. So I'll do that again, click on OK. And in this case, it's just giving me the 2018 information on there. There are a number of templates for you to use on here, which are available for configuration. And these are really quite flexible, very powerful, and can be exported into either Excel or as images to be able to be used in, for example, if you have to do PowerPoint presentations, then just take the image out and distribute it. We also support other BI tools such as Tableau or Power BI or Click, so that you can interrogate the Meisterplan database through there. So, for example, we quite like Tableau because it's nice and easy to use, and it's got good reporting capability on here and allows more sophisticated reporting that can just be supported within the tool. And I know that Power BI and the others will also enable you to do the same. Okay. So I've created some work, I've made some allocations, I've pushed projects backwards and forwards, and I've changed my priority order. And that was where I, being a little bit glib about changing it. You'll notice on here that my project is ranked number 11, and it's got a project score of -100. If I right click on my project, you see I can sort by project score, and by doing that, that will move my new project to where it should be in the priority order based against everybody else. Oh dear, it's not even going to get a look in. It is way too low. If we're going to get our project included in here, then whoever is sponsoring it or managing it, then we need to be looking and maybe getting this to be a more sensible project. So I'm just going to make some slightly different changes here. Maybe this project actually, we hadn't realized it's already been on the go for a while and there's already resources committed to it. It actually fits the strategy a bit better, and actually the payback period business case is a bit better, and really it's a bit lower risk than it was before. So I've changed some metrics on here, and what that has done to the project score now has given it a score of 65 based upon these attributes that I've taken down here, and I create these within my system and apply the appropriate scores to them. So based on a project score of 65, I can move this to where it should be, which in this case takes it up to rank number 10. Okay, but I'm not entirely sure that all of these in the correct order. I don't want really to make any changes of my projects up here, my Windows update. I know that's where it was to begin with. So what I'm going to do is to take my new project and put it just below the must-have line, because I'm told that this is very important. Based upon the metrics that I've put in, well, I'm not sure it's that important, but I've been told I need to rank it up here. So, because all of these scoring systems aren't perfect by any means. They're a good vehicle for debate and discussion, but they're not going to be perfect. We would expect a management discussion around the topic already. But now, based upon my new project there, what I could also do is rank everything else in there based upon their scores. And I can sort by the project score. So as long as everyone's been objective on their project scores, I can choose to either sort all of my projects. Well, I don't want to do that because we've already agreed these are must-haves. So I'm just going to do downstream from my new project. Click on that, and it reorganizes my projects in ranking order. And now I've got what I believe to be the appropriate presentation going forward to my project board or my portfolio board to check whether everybody agrees that this is the way that this is the plan that we should take forward into the next planning period. Now, I've only been working in one scenario. I may want to create a couple more scenarios. Let's say my best guess, and let's say my best case, worst case, best guess. So I can maybe have 2 or 3 scenarios to take through to the portfolio board and make some proposals and changes when I'm in there. Okay, so we've looked at people, we've looked at allocations, we've created some more work down here. We've looked at how our roles may or may not be overloaded down here. We've come up with some proposals to go forward and created some reports upon it. I think that's probably sufficient for this afternoon to cover that and demonstrate how plans work. I'm going to hand back to Thomas at that point to get any questions that have come in and wrap up for us this afternoon and just give us a bit of information. So I'm going to change this, change presenter, and take that back to Thomas. Okay.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, I'm here. So thanks a lot. I'll give you some time to recover and have a look at the questions. And we've got a couple of questions coming in. So I will just read them out in the order they came in. So we have one question from Therese. She asked, do you have a recommendation for how to reflect the time that IT staff spends on non-project work, for example, support tickets? If an IT person typically spends 30% of their time on support, how would you take that out of their capacity? Use an individual or inherited calendar, ? So thanks for this question, Therese. I'll quickly show you how I would do that in Meisterplan. So my recommendation is so basically you have 2 ways to approach that topic. One way would be to deduct that from an individual's capacity indeed. So you can either give that resource, that IT resource, an individual calendar with a lower amount of working hours a day. So you would only cover the amount of hours available for project work here. Or you would give that resource an exception, an availability exception of throughout the year. Let's say that person would only be available like 70%, these 70% being a multiplicator for this calendar. So that person would work 8 hours a day, but only 70% of that would be visible in Meisterplan for planning that on projects. But the way I really recommend is to work with the original capacity of, for example, here 8 hours a day, and open or add a new project which we would call daily business or run the business, for example. And we would push that to the very top of the list because we want this to cover our, let's say, capacity base of the resources we add to. And then we would give this project a start and end date for, let's say, the whole year. So basically, this is really to cover the daily business, and we would then book the IT personnel on that and plan with 0.3 FTE. That would resemble 30% of their capacity. And then we see here for Sophie, the dark green line. This is then the run the business part of her workload. This gives you a quite good view on who is currently working on run the business topics with which amount of their capacity. And you can, of course, bring in adaptions. For example, if you have a revision in your company or you have teams taking so they have, maybe you have different teams responsible for giving IT support. and you can bring in this information, these details then in this project. So I recommend going that way. I hope this answered your question. Then the second question came in from Alan. He asked, my team works on an agile basis. Will Meisterplan handle this? So that's a very good question, Alan. As I hear very often, we don't need portfolio management anymore. We are working agile now. And this is something we cannot really support. We here at Meisterplan, we are also working in an agile context in the development teams. So we work in agile sprints of 2 weeks, developing Meisterplan. And the way we do it, I mean, our developers still need to know what are the strategical relevant topics they need to work on and how they work on it and who does what is then planned in an agile way in daily and weekly meetings. But the decision which topics are really important, this must be covered through an official PPM process. What we do is we grant our agile teams a, let's say, 40% of run the business capacity, and the remaining 60% we divide into capacity available for minor changes, because we still want to be able to work on minor topics which, you know, push in or just come in without us being really able to plan that. And we need to be able to answer these demands. And then the rest of the capacity being available for the real major changes, which are then covered in the agile meetings. So
just to clarify Thomas's point there, when he said we can't support it, he's saying we can't support the argument that agile doesn't need some portfolio management, not that we can't support agile.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, John. So the next question came in from Ibrahim, and he asked, are we able to set how many hours make one FTE on individual resources? So in Meisterplan, we have a resource pool where all the static data on resources, roles, calendars, skills, and organizational levels, organizational structures are maintained. And as you can see here, you can set up different calendars where you can define the daily working hours and the calendar individual exceptions, which would be like the bank holidays relevant for that calendar or region. So here in our demo database, we have different calendars for different European countries. And every resource gets a calendar attached. What you do though is exactly one of those calendars you have to define as the default calendar by this little checkbox. So I can make now the UK calendar the default calendar by clicking this checkbox. Currently here it's the US calendar. And the default calendar defines your FTE, meaning when setting up the US calendar as it is, currently this would be 40 hours a week, and that means that one FTE, so one standard employee you're planning with, has a capacity of 40 working hours a week or 8 hours a day. And this also counts in the calendar individual exceptions. So let's take, as I'm working in and living in Germany, the 3rd of October is a bank holiday for us. If I made the German calendar the standard calendar, then in this week with the 3rd of October, an FTE would have only 4 working days. And everyone using a non-standard calendar, like for example the UK one, they would have to work 5 days, and then they would have in that week 1.25 FTE, as one FTE only covers 4 days in that week, by default definition. So the answer to your question in short is yes, you can define how many hours make an FTE, but the moment you work with different calendars, you have to define one single default calendar defining what is the FTE, and you cannot have an FTE valid for each and every country or region you are working in. John, do you want to add something to that?
No, I think that's very clear, and that's the prime reason behind that is because you may want to allocate work across different locations, irrespective of what the working pattern may be. So you need a consistent FTE to be able to look at one location versus another.
Thank you. So Ibrahim, I hope this answered your question. Otherwise, and this brings us back to the slides, we of course offer further material to inform yourself about Meisterplan, the way you can work with it and the way it works. So top left you see our help center, which you reach through help.meisterplan.com, or if you look in the main menu of Meisterplan, you can also reach it. There's a button saying Help Center. In this Help Center, you find a section called Get Started. You can see that here on the screenshot, featuring videos, tutorial videos, and also a full section on how to do best practice lean portfolio management in your company, in your organization, and how the different instruments Meisterplan offers. So project planning, the technical resource management, portfolios and scenarios, how all these instruments work together to define and create and live a lean portfolio management process. And then secondly, we have the knowledge base, which covers basically a user manual and some information about possible interfacing. And then secondly, bottom right, you see a screenshot of our website, meisterplan.com, and this also gives you some more details about our product. And you see there the method section, which gives you again more detailed information also on these hypnotizing spinning circles I showed you earlier. Then what we want to do is also offer more webinars. John, you want to give some information on that?
Yeah, very briefly. I think these are the next couple of webinars that we've got outlined, which we would believe would be useful to people. But what we'd really like you to do is for you to decide what you'd like to see. If you would register on the Quest website, it's for the general population. It's not just there for Meisterplan customers. If you would like us to do some cover a particular topic in a webinar, then get it on there, and we will look to address it as soon as we can.
Thank you, John. Then, last but not least, your ultimate source of knowledge is John himself.
Ultimate,
so,
heavens.
Yeah. So please feel free to contact John. You see his contact details here on this slide. We will send every participant of this webinar this slide deck, and you can then look through all the information you saw here, and we will also make you available the download for this recording. Now we have it 3 p.m. sharp UK time.
Very good. Bang on.
Yeah, we are through with our content, and we hope you enjoyed it. I hope we see and hear us again soon in another webinar. Have fun using Meisterplan. Activate a trial via our website if you like, and contact John, and yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Couldn't have said it any better, John. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.